All right. So first things first. So I got my notes. So why is it important to work on your mindset? When I talk about working on your mindset, what I call that is your power hour. So if y'all hear me say like a power hour, that's what I mean. I mean intentional time alone to work on your mindset. You could do a lot of different things inside of that time, and it doesn't have to be an hour, right? You can start with 10 minutes and just master the first 10 minutes of your morning. But that time is super duper important. The thing about our mind is that most of our thoughts are negative, right? Most of our thoughts are negative. They are really trying to keep us safe, right? These thoughts are trying to keep us safe. And we may be conditioned more so to think negative thoughts, to have a negative self-concept, to have a lot of self-doubt, to blame ourselves for failures, to shame ourselves, right? To protect ourselves from being hurt and like resist being vulnerable. And all of those things are natural, right? But we have to work and be intentional about choosing thoughts that are going to help us move forward versus like holding us back. Okay. So our reality is just perception. It's not truth. It's not fact. Right. I know it seems like fact, right? The way that you think about yourself. It's just like, well, obviously, I failed at this, this, and this. So that means that I'm a failure. Or I wasn't able to, create the body that I want. I failed several times, right? And what's so different about this time? So we have like our perception of ourself, we have perception of our life, we have a perception of like what we can achieve, and all of that is only real because of how we choose to think about it. Okay, so I'm just checking the chat real quick. Hey Shannon, hey Shamika, hey ladies, thanks for saying hi. Okay, so here's the thing, our perception is just that. It's what we already believe to be true. Okay. Our brain is constantly filtering what we see and what we perceive. And so we think that that is truth. So, for example, if you were to purchase, you're going car shopping, right? This is like the typical example. When you go car shopping and you're like, oh, okay, I have a Lincoln MKX, right? I never cared about Lincoln MKXs before I started looking at them to drive. And before I started shopping for that car, I never noticed Lincoln MKXs. But now every time I see a Lincoln MKX, and my son will do this too, my 4-year-old, like, Mommy, there's your car, right? And it's not that more people are driving MKXs, is that I am noticing them more, okay? And this happens because of something called our reticular activating system. Okay, so our reticular activating system in our brain acts as a filter. And this filter lets in things that we're familiar with. It lets in like things that we believe to be true, right? So our brain is always letting in things that we believe to be true already. And so when we see that thing, we're like, oh, see, I knew it, right? And it's confirming what you believe to be true. But you're only noticing that more because it's what you already believe to be true. So a great example of this is politics. And, when you're scrolling on social media and you're seeing, certain things on social media, and you feel like everything that resonates with you, and you're like, oh, yes, this is true. And I'm going to like that. I'm going to love that. And it feels like a lot of people are agreeing, or it feels like, oh, see, there's evidence right there. There's evidence to back up what I already believe, but it's not necessarily that there's more evidence for your point. It's just, that's what your brain is allowing in. Okay. So let me know if this is making sense so far. I'm going to break it down to your action steps here in a little bit. But I want you to understand that you're making conscious decisions, but you're making subconscious decisions as well, all the time, based on your perception, based on your beliefs. So it's interesting because it's not so much of what you find, right? It's what you're seeking, right? The question that you're asking or your deep belief is actually informing what you see. And so you think that your deep belief is correct because you're seeing more of that, but it's actually the opposite. You're seeing more of that because you have this belief, right? Does this make sense? Am I making sense to anybody? Let me check the chat before I keep going. You know, people always start messaging me when I start my lives. Why? Do not disturb. Okay. All right. So makes sense. All right, Krista, thank you. All right. So our reticular activating system, it is letting in what we believe to be true. Okay. So intentional thoughts change the game. When you practice thinking intentional thoughts, you change your actual brain structure. You change your actual brain chemistry. It is a scientific thing. Like your brain is literally different when you think on a topic or a subject or a certain way. So the way that I like to kind of talk about it, it's called neuroplasticity. And whenever it's kind of like, say you have a field of grass, right? And you walk along that grass. And at first, when you start walking from point A to point B, you know, the grass is high. It's a little bit difficult to get from point A to point B. But every day when you walk that path, it gets easier and easier. And the path that you walk, as long as you're walking the same path every time, it becomes a little bit easier for you to walk every single time, right? To where then you don't have to even think about it. You just follow the trail and it's no big deal. And you can like do other things, right? So that's the same way our brain is too when we on purpose practice intentional thought creation like affirmations. And we're saying, okay, this is what I want to believe about myself. This is what I want to create. This is who I want to develop into. One of the biggest things that we have to ask ourselves, especially with women of color, with Black women, we need to ask ourselves, what do I want? Like, we don't ask ourselves enough. Like, what do I want? What do I want out of my career? What do I want out of my parenting relationship? What do I want out of my partnership? What do I want in life in general? Where do I want to live? Like, what do I want? And how does it feel energetically? Like, how does my body respond to these thoughts, right? And so sometimes it can feel like a disconnect, like here I am, and this is what I want, but I don't know how to get there. And then we start having that negative self-talk of like, you'll never get there. You have failed so many times. So that's kind of where affirmations can kind of fill the gap. Okay. And so we have to practice thinking those thoughts on purpose during your power hour in order to catch yourself in the moment of your negative self-talk and self-sabotage in life. Okay, so you designating the first 10 minutes of your morning and mastering your morning. These are habits of highly successful people. If you've ever listened to Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. Mastering your morning and having intentional thoughts, setting your intention for the day is super powerful. Okay. So that you're practicing during that time repetitively, right? So that connection to your brain where you're connecting to your higher self and you're visualizing your higher self gets easier and easier so that you can catch yourself in the moments of life and say, okay, I'm actually self-sabotaging right now. Let me choose my different thought. right? And that reticular activating system during the moment, if you've been practicing, will start to allow a different perspective, a more positive perspective, a higher self concept, right? In the moment. So, this is why it's important that you work on your mindset daily, or at least most days of the week. Okay. Okay, Claudine, thank you. I'm making sense. Let's see. All right. Okay. So we've all experienced a time where we felt like something resonated with us, right? Like, ooh, you heard something, and you're like, ooh, that was good. And it just resonated with your spirit, right? And I sometimes you can call that like an aha moment, but really what it is, what I think it is an acknowledgement of something that you already know in your core to be true, right? When something resonates with you, it's like, oh man, yes, I know that's true. And it's like, even if there's a concept like you already kind of know intellectually, but just hearing it again is powerful and resonates with you. It's the same reason why, people go to church to hear the word, right? You're transformed by your mind. People pay thousands of dollars to hear certain speakers speak. All they're doing is talking, right? But there's something about that, the energy of that person or the energy of those words, and you acknowledging, like, oh my God, yes, that is true, right? And so notice when you resonate with something, start to get in tune with that energy, that when you resonate with something, right? And so every morning, tuning into yourself, being able to master your morning, 10 minutes minimum, right? Intentional thought creation. Okay. So this is kind of how I think about affirmation. So when you write an affirmation, you want to write something that makes you feel a certain way. Okay. So you want your affirmations, the core of your affirmations, right? We don't want to write necessarily like superficial type of affirmations. You want the core of your affirmations to hit some deep virtues. And so as I was thinking about this live, these are some of the virtues that I came up with, which I think are really, really good. There's several of them, so I'm going to read them out. So self-trust, self-love, intuition, wisdom, freedom, abundance, courage, respect, self-control, hope, possibility, truth, authenticity, creativity and imagination, joy, faith, compassion, forgiveness, gratitude, self-belief, autonomy, encouragement, joy, fun, peace, and favor. Right? So these are some really good virtues that I want you to think about when you decide to write affirmations. It's like the core of what you want is somewhere in one of these, right? Like it's not really that you want to lose weight to look good in your bathing suit. Like that's just a superficial thing, right? And actually, I don't even have confidence on here. I'm gonna add that confidence. The core of what you really want is in one of these virtues. So when you think about writing your affirmations, think about the core of what it is. So if your brain offers you a superficial, affirmation like I look great in my bathing suit, right? Think about, well, why is that important to me, right? And your affirmation might be something like, I exude confidence, self-love, and courage because I deserve it, right? Like that, the energy of that is it's abundant, right? And you should be feeling into your affirmations. Sometimes when I coach and ladies don't connect to their affirmations, typically it's because they, number one, haven't been practicing connecting, or their affirmations don't really mean that much to them, right? So the power in your affirmations is not only in the repetition, but it's also in your emotion. Like you have to be connected and feel into your affirmations. That is where the power is in your is in your emotion, right? And so I like to write out my affirmations. Writing them, I think, is very important because it helps you visualize them a little bit better, right? You can visualize yourself having that. And it's like your brain is visualizing, but your energy is also like radiating and like confirming with that. I don't know how to, it's a little woo woo, but you can feel the energy when you talk about virtues like this, right? That really, really matter to you and that resonating, right? That, um, that energy that's like, oh, yes, like that's true, or that's something that you want, or something that resonates with the core of you, that's power. Okay. So you should be making them around virtues like that I mentioned. Let me go back to my chat and make sure. Andrea, how do we start a morning routine? Oh, how you start your morning can set the tone for the day. Absolutely. All right. So here are some of my like initial thoughts on how to create. So number one, they should be around some of those virtues. Okay. Number two, I call it the 4 P's. So they should be personal, they should be powerful, they should be present tense and positive. Okay. So they should be personal, about you, right? You cannot affirm for somebody else, for your husband, for your kids. It can be about somebody else. It has to be about you. It has to be powerful. Powerful means the emotion, right? You have to be emotionally and energetically connected to your affirmations. It has to be present tense. So if you're affirming something and you're saying, I will do something like in the future, that means that you're here and your dream is here and here's the abundance and here you are in scarcity. That's like a wanting, like I want these things, right? So you don't want to say your affirmation or create affirmations that are, I want something, because it means if you want something, it means you don't have it right now. But affirmations are about having them now, right? Affirmations are about embodying them now and getting into the energy of having them now. So in terms of weight loss, right? I do an exercise with my clients so that they can find their true why. And it always goes back to these virtues, right? Self-trust, confidence, right? And it's like, okay, how can you give confidence to yourself right now? Because energetically, that's always available to you. It's not available only after you lose the weight, right? How can you give yourself that self-trust now? So when people say, I don't know if I can be consistent, to me, that says, I don't trust myself with my goals. I don't trust myself to do what I say I was going to do and actually execute my plan. I don't trust myself, right? So making sure that your affirmations are personal, powerful, present tense, and that they're positive. So that means that you don't want to like bring up things that you don't want. So for example, this is a bad example, but it's the one that I always use. I won't be late to work, right? You don't want to say I won't be late or I don't, or something that you don't like. Say, I will no longer have to take my diabetic medication. You don't want to, because that's like affirming like the negative things. You want to say, I will be on time to work, right? Or I live in a body that, you know, provides with me with safety, freedom, right? And abundant health, instead of saying, I will not be on diabetic medication, right? We always want to be affirming what we want, not what we don't want. We don't want to be problem focused. We want to be solution focused, right? We want to focus on abundance, not scarcity, not the things that we don't have or don't want, but the things that we do have and that we do want. Is this making sense? Let me check the chat. Krista. Bernita, can you share a great podcast, speaker, or audio book for the morning? Yes. Okay. So I will think about it, but yes, I listen to multiple. I'm an Audible person too. So, oh my God, there are so many. But I'll share that at the end. Okay. And I know that Andrea, if you're still watching, you got some too. So she can share some too, because I know she's into that too. All right. So they got to be personal. They got